Sandosham, my humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to continue from the last satsang, which I spoke about why sometimes we are unable to strengthen our meditational process, meditational sadhana. And I spoke about the qualities of the human mind. And I showed you that there are key factors that influences our human mind. It creates turbulent mind, and there are 18 qualities that make the mind shrunken, right? And that prevents us from acquiring the jnana yoga, the wisdom knowledge, and ultimately it prevents us from acquiring that Purushottama yoga or that oneness or the I God state as what Mahan spoke about. So what are the 18 qualities? And I spoke about the 18 qualities, and it's listed there. False values, vanity, arrogance, pretension, anger, cruelty, ignorance, impurity of the mind, egoism, slander, all those things, 18 qualities that I spoke about in detail. As long as we have any one of those qualities and it's reverberating in our mind, the mind will not be able to acquire the knowledge. So the whole idea is that we need to learn to know these qualities and to put in the measures to address them and put in the measures to make sure that they don't stay in our mind, linger there, and slowly we remove them from the mind and we recognize them and slowly make sure that it doesn't, we don't allow it to come into our mind. So it requires a fair bit of discipline, a fair bit of understanding of what these are, understanding what triggers this. And if we can do that, the mind will become more and more peaceful. So when we are able to slowly get rid of this, then you see that the mind slowly starts gravitating towards a more peaceful mind, right? So it starts nurturing the values that actually cultivates peace and tranquility and serenity. And that helps us to acquire that knowledge, the understanding of the universe that we are living in, understanding the concept of God and the self. We're able to see that relationship between the macrocosm and the microcosm within us. And that ultimately leads us to that state of oneness. Mahan has beautifully said this, Ipparamam apparamam ega paraparamam yennu nan arinden. He says that how, when one acquires this knowledge, the external cosmos and the internal cosmos, I realize within me, all as one, that I God state. So to get to that level of understanding, what is it that we need to observe? As I said earlier, if we slowly keep the negative qualities away from our mind, not allow it to come into our mind and grip our mind and hold on, when we slowly let it go and eventually we don't entertain them, you see that something very interesting happens. And you start seeing that when we get rid of this 18 demonic or asuric or the negative qualities, slowly you start seeing the qualities that make the mind more enriched, more expansionary, more illumined, starts gripping the mind. And when we get rid of all those 18 qualities, a very important quality comes into our mind. You see that fearlessness, right? You are not afraid of anything because nothing torments you. All the demons, all the asuras, everything has been evacuated from the mind. All the things that, makes you scared, all those things disappears. Right? You have that confidence, you have that willpower. You say, yes, The divinity is the rider of my chariot. I fear nothing, neither death, nor disease, nor poverty, nor ridicule. Nothing impacts me. So a sense of courage, a sense of strength of the mind comes in. So we see that as we slowly get rid of the negative qualities, the mind becomes powerful. The mind becomes potent. The mind becomes focused, precise. So this is what, and you become very strong. Nothing shakes you. And this is the beautiful part of that, getting rid of that 18, asuric qualities. So when fearlessness comes, something very interesting happens is that slowly you see that the mind, becomes, attains the purity of the mind. You see the mind slowly, our thoughts become pure because we're not afraid of anything. We are willing to embrace everything, willing to try different things, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's okay. We learn from it. Mind becomes innocent. The mind, when the mind becomes pure, you see that the thoughts become pure. The thoughts become more enriching. The thoughts become more elevating and inspirational. When the mind becomes pure, when the thoughts become pure, you see that the words become more peaceful, more calmer, more inspirational. And you see that our actions too eventually dovetails, the thoughts and the words. So you see that the purity of mind, because there's nothing you're afraid of, you're willing to learn, embrace. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall down. It's okay for people to ridicule you. It's okay. I'm going to learn. And that in itself is being innocent. You go with an open mind, right? I may not know everything, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to make mistakes. I'm willing to learn from my mistakes. So we see that sense of purity comes in. There's no ego, say, well, what would people think about and all this, no. So that fearlessness, it's okay. I don't mind pushing ahead. I don't mind making mistakes, but I'm going to learn from this. And this is part of that loftiness of the mind. Even sometimes when the body is slowly, dissipating his strengths, but the mind is still strong to lift the body up, right? So we see this happening. And something very interesting also happens is that when the fearlessness, the purity of the mind comes in, you see that nothing shakes you. There's no excuses that you'll give, right? The mind is continuously searching for knowledge, seeking for the truth, seeking for answers. What it doesn't understand, it pushes ahead. And there is that steadfast in spiritual knowledge, wanting to know that knower, wanting to know why things happen in the way it is. This whole discovery of the spiritual compass and using that spiritual compass in the best possible way, using logical, reasoning, scientific approaches, that steadfast of not allowing anything not to be understood. That comes with, having that pure mind and the search for truth, right? And sometimes human mind, says, okay, I'll do it tomorrow lah, and tomorrow lah, and eventually we never get it done. You have a query in the mind, you're not sure, it should not allow you to sleep until you've found the answer. Once you've got the answer, you can sleep, peacefully, right? So that steadfast in spiritual knowledge is so important. We don't give excuses of traffic jam lah, work lah, this lah, that lah. No. We allocate a particular time for us to seek that knowledge. We may not get it every time, but at least I'm learning little bit by little bit. And slowly over time, it builds up. So when we give excuses, nature and divinity will excuse us from acquiring that knowledge. So that steadfastness, is really important. And you see that, when you have that fearlessness, the purity of mind, the searching for knowledge, something very interesting happens, right? Material world wealth is limited. How much money can you have? How much money can you use, right? And you see that how much material things that you can eat, how much can you eat, how much can you enjoy? All these are limited. But what you see is that when we acquire that knowledge has no bounds, right? It is infinite. And if that's what the mind sees as wealth and prosperity, the mind will be bountiful with that wealth. But if the mind is caught up with material wealth, there's always be limited. எப்போதும் குறையா இருக்கும். There's always insufficiency, right? But when the mind anchors on that spiritual knowledge, which is abundant, the mind will never see that kurai or that limitedness. And this is the beautiful part. Swamiji says that the searching for knowledge, he says, kuraiya nivirthika kuriye kurale kadavul. He says, one who do not have any limitations or faults or limitedness is God incarnate, right? So when we don't have, when we have things that we don't understand, with the pure mind and the steadfast search for that knowledge, we see that, we are able to overcome those challenges. And the challenges overcome, you become a sense of clarity comes in, sense of understanding comes in. And you see that in itself gives you that abundance. Material wealth is limited, but that knowledge, the wisdom is abundant. And you see that you start getting that vallal gunam. That means that charitable mindset, willing to share knowledge, willing to, share experiences. The more you share, the more you give the knowledge, the more you learn, the more abundance you get, right? And this is something I see that, service to society. You're stepping into the divinity shoes. There are times that everybody is given an opportunity to step into the divinity shoes. Some take it, some don't. Here, charity in the form of acquiring that knowledge and sharing that knowledge. You see, Mahan, everybody spoke about this Kundalini meditation, written about it, but this Mahan learned about it, mastered it, simplified it, and made it accessible to everybody. That's why he's a Mahan. And this is the same thing with great personalities, thinkers, very complex ideas. They introspect, contemplate, reflect, meditate, understand it really well. Try to make it simple so that others don't have to struggle to acquire that knowledge, making it accessible to everybody. And that's what a Mahan is. That's what a great person is. It's not just knowledge, resources, wealth, all those things that they get abundance and they are able to liberally share with everybody. This is what we see that, the greatest thing that why some people and why humanity as a whole has thrived, because these qualities of sharing and service to society, stepping into the divinity's shoes to be able to be liberally, giving that resources for everybody to thrive. So the whole idea in the mind is about productivity, progress, enriching, thriving, not just for oneself, for everybody. So it transition from the selfishness to the selfness. That means it's looking at itself, transforming itself, purifying itself, understanding the power within oneself. And when one comes to the level, it becomes selfless, it becomes abundance. It realizes that it's not limited, it's got abundance of, wealth. And in that abundance, that selfness leads to selfless, to ultimately self-realized. So there's an evolution of the human mind that happens. So the charitable qualities come in, the altruism comes in, that perintanme, that wow, I have so much resources to give everybody liberally without any expectation. When you do that, you see that you prioritize things in your life. You see that, hey, I want to be able to acquire this wonderful sandosam feeling, that beautiful, liberating feeling that is not constrained by anything. You see that, while you have that, you don't get caught up with your material senses that are limited. You have control over your material wants and desires, but you are liberally sharing everything that you have. So an interesting aspect is that you have full control over your senses towards that material reality. You're able to discipline so that, you don't get blinded by your desires. You have good control over all those material desires, good management of our desires, so that it doesn't blind us. Yes, there are some desires. Desires are important. We learn to divinize our desires so that we outlive our desires. We become transcendental to our desires. We become liberated from our desires. We become enlightened by our desires. And this is what the part of that jnana is, living to outlive everything. And that is what gracefully aging. We don't hold on to something. When we hold on to something, we are unable to learn new things. Life is such that we experience, we outlive that experience to get new experiences. And this is where cumulatively we acquire that knowledge, eventually becomes wisdom knowledge. So we see that it started off fearlessness, that when all the 18 asuric quality leaves, we get, strength of the mind. We're not afraid of anything, trying, exploring. The explorer in us comes. We explore with a pure mind, and the full throttle of acquiring that truth and that knowledge. But we then are blessed with abundance of knowledge, abundance of productivity, abundance of prosperity. Eventually we say, hey, let me share this with others. But at the same time, we see that, when we acquire all this knowledge, we know how to control our senses, because sometimes people get a lot of wealth, a lot of knowledge, they don't want to share. They're very stingy, right? So that, Mahan, that vallal quality, that liberally giving, the knowledge and whatever that they have. And the more they give, you see, the more they acquire, and that's how divinity operates, right? So you're able to control your senses for your own self-gratification, right? So finally, you see that you have that sacrificial qualities, the qualities, not just for oneself, but for the betterment of everyone. You're willing to sacrifice your time. You're willing to sacrifice, all the leisure and all the things for self-development so that you're able to share this to everyone with a betterment, so that they all can also acquire the knowledge to live a wonderful, joyful, prosperous life. So there is this continuous evolution that happens in the human mind, that sacrificing to continuously evolve, continuously develop, continuously move up the value chain in terms of our understanding, knowledge. And you see that the continuous improvement through our effort leads us to dedication, hard work, discipline, to not just look out for ourselves, but of course improving ourselves, but for the betterment of the greater society, nature, and everything else. This is where we see that we gravitate towards a more individual identity to a more universal identity, an individual identity to an indivisible identity. You see the interconnection between you and the entire continuum out there. And you see that the mind becomes more and more flexible, agile, more and more expansionary, more and more universal. And you see that when you do that, You're not perturbed by anything. The mind becomes a powerful, powerful, you know, tool of introspection, contemplation, reflection. And you see that meditation then becomes so great. It becomes so powerful. It becomes so deep that you see that nothing perturbs. There's no more disturbances in the human mind. So these are the first 6 qualities of the 18 qualities that I want to speak about today. And I said, when you introspect on this 6 qualities, obviously you've got to introspect on the 18 asuric qualities. And as I said earlier, as you slowly, keep them away, far away from your mind through understanding awareness, slowly you see that these 6 qualities starts gripping the human mind, and they have an enriching, elevating expansion of the human mind. You become confident, you know, you become concentrated, you become creative, you know, and you become connected. So we see that, this is a natural state of evolution of this human mind. You become more contemplative, right? And slowly you see that a sense of peace and tranquility and quietude dawns the mind. When that happens, your meditation becomes an awesome, awesome experience. This is what I want to cover, the first 6 qualities of the human mind as we slowly get rid of the 18 asuric qualities. The divine qualities starts gripping the human mind. Next week, I'll continue another 6 qualities of the human mind. And you'll see that as we go along, you don't need to do anything. You just understand what makes the mind shrunken, the mind will expand. When the mind expands, you see that the jnana yoga, the wisdom knowledge grips the mind. When the wisdom knowledge grips the mind, the Purushottaman, the divinity, the universal personality, you'll realize it within yourself. Santosh.